over me. She's over me. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, welcome to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I am here to keep you company for the next couple hours. That's at least what we got scheduled, and unfortunately, that's all the time I get before the network kicks us off and Paisley comes on. So I hope you guys are doing great, though. Happy Friday to everybody, and hope your Friday's been absolutely magical. I know mine has been. If by magic it means you're busy and you're trying to get a lot of things done, then that's my magical Friday. I've been working away. I'm getting ready to reset the studio probably over the weekend, but I might wait till Monday, Tuesday when I'm not broadcasting at all on any of the shows. But we'll see. I might get a little antsy tomorrow and hang at least the sign up. I'm really excited about that. For those of you on YouTube that watch the show and you see the setting behind me, it's kind of a labor of love, and it's been set up for a long time. So I thought freshen it up, give it a new look, kind of give it a new fresh coat of paint. Not really, I'm not painting. I'm just rehanging stuff and putting some new stuff in and taking some old stuff out or repositioning. But, it's kind of that, I don't know, just time for a new vibe. And so I'm really looking forward to that. But again, hope everything's going good for you guys. Thank you for joining us here in the Paranormal Portal. Special thanks to the Freaky Friday guys for setting the stage for us. And it's always a tough act to follow, but I'll do our best to fill those shoes, fill the slots. And remember, after our show, of course, Paisley Wild will be coming up next with the Spaces Between. So there's just amazing stuff going on here on Friday nights for sure. So it's a full boat of entertainment on TFRlive.com as we are broadcasting live on TFR Live, iHeart, TuneIn and TalkStream Live, as well as simulcasting on YouTube. So it's a pretty full dance card tonight, but we are going to keep it all busy and try to keep it flowing and rolling tonight. Hello to everybody that's in the audiences in TFR. Great to see you guys, and hello to all you guys over on YouTube. It's great to see you all as well. So it's just warms my cackles, or whatever the hell that phrase is. It warms me up inside to see all the friendly faces hanging out during the show. So appreciate your being there. During the course of our show, of course, we will have the phone lines will be open. If you want to call in to the Paranormal Portal, you want to talk paranormal, or you got something paranormal you want to share that happened to you, we'd love to hear from you. The phone number for the show is 720 720-923-0500. Again, 720-923-0500. So that's the way you can call in and be a part of the show if you should so choose. I'll be here and trying to keep an eye on it as much as I can throughout the course of the show. Sometimes I do a really good job on it, and sometimes I suck. So it's kind of dealer's choice, as it were, because I'm got a lot of things to keep an eye of, especially when we're on network nights. Some hosts make that look easy, but I haven't figured out how to do all that real seamlessly yet. But I'm still trying, and I think that's the key. Is you got to keep reasserting yourself to do a better show than you did before. And I think we're doing pretty good. But I got a bunch of paranormal fun ready to roll for you guys tonight. The first thing I wanted to do was just polish off an article that we were reading through on Wednesday's show. We didn't get through it all, but this is coming from ranker.com, and this is now I have to tell you the name of the article is kind of a misnomer because there really aren't that many forest rangers that have participated in these stories as far as I can tell, but they are some really cool stories that people have reported, and it is creepy forest ranger stories. Is what it is from ranker.com. And it's a pretty good article. They're not extraordinarily long, but the phenomena they're talking about is really pretty cool. And, if you like the paranormal, you should like this. Otherwise, there might be something wrong with you. I'm not sure. All right. The first one is tonight. The first one is The Creature on the Porch. It says, my house has a wraparound porch on the backside of the house, and the porch butts right up against the woods. There is no backyard since literally the thick of the woods grows right up against the porch. Wow, that must be a great view. One night I'm sitting in the back porch with my boyfriend and I hear heavy footsteps. The most heavy sounding steps I have ever heard in my life. Like a two-legged elephant is walking onto my porch. Well, the porch is long and we're sitting at one far end, and the steps are coming from the other end. And I hear the heavy steps slowly coming towards us. And I snap on my boyfriend to get up and turn on the lights. And we're both fairly big. We're both fairly big dudes. But this sound spooks us. I try to yell and scare it off, thinking it was just an animal of some kind. But I heard the steps speed up, and it started coming at us faster. Well, it's pitch black, and my boyfriend can't find the lights, so I turn around to run for the porch switches, and I hear the steps speed up and feel a whoosh of wind against my back. I hear the steps slam past me, moving faster towards the other end of the porch, and just before I hit the lights, I hear two final sounds. The first sounds like it's grabbed the railing and pressed it off to jump off over the railing. And as it jumps, it lands on the ground, and I hear the huge heavy elephant feet land on the ground. The lights turn on, and I run to look over the railing where it sounded like it landed. It's an 8-foot drop to the ground, but there's nothing there. Well, I wanted to poop my pants right there and then, but I turn around and my boyfriend is visibly shaken. I've never seen him afraid of anything. We go inside and lock all the doors, and then drink a beer and talk about what had just happened. We agreed to not sit out on the porch anymore with the lights off. And the funny thing is that we have motion sensing lights on both ends of the porch, but not in the middle though. And why they never activated is the really, really weird part. That's pretty spooky. I don't know. It's a topic we cover a lot in the paranormal, is the ghostly footsteps. These sounds that are, for all intents and purposes, people swear that there's somebody there walking. There's these ghostly sounds. But oftentimes they'll walk right past and you can hear the heel and the foot hitting the floor, but there'll be nothing there. I don't know. It's a strange thing. And some people say they feel the vibration from the impact on the floor, and how that can be. I don't know. I can't pretend to know. It's some kind of manipulation, obviously, but what a mind screw, really. That's the kind of thing that really jumps in your head. What do? You can't see it. You can't do anything. And I think that's probably the intent, is some form of intimidation. It's it's the idea of making you feel powerless. And there's lots of ideas why spirits might do that if it is indeed spiritual. Is it possible it's a multidimensional thing where it interacts physically with our environment, but we just can't see it? Is it just out of phase to us somehow? Maybe. But whatever it is, it's really kind of a mind game. It just seems like a mind game. Now, the other ones that are odd and these I think are more residual in nature. Many people report hearing these footsteps, feeling these footsteps, but they seem to be walking on a whole different floor than what is present in the houses. Plenty of people have carpeting, but they hear boots hitting wood floors, and they experience that walking through. Now, it may be some point in history there were wood floors, and somebody left some kind of psychic imprint through the years that just plays itself out. But it's hard to know. It's hard to know. Now, I do believe also that there's the ability for some beings to create hallucinations. That somehow they can make us experience things that we might otherwise not be experiencing. And I think that's a whole nother can of worms. But you can see the conundrum of all this. It's like, yeah, something as simple as footsteps can be 1,000 things. It could be so many different things. And that's kind of the curiosity, I guess, with the paranormal, is how do you know which one it is? And, whatever you're banking on, you got to roll those dice and you got to deal with it. So I don't know. That's creepy stuff. Footsteps, even though they're largely benign, they never oftentimes lead to anything. They just seem to be intimidating, but for whatever reason. So the next one I'm going to read to you tonight is coming from that same article. There's just a couple more after this from this article, and then we'll move on to something else. But it says they ran through a man. It says, I worked at a summer camp where the cabins were arranged in a circle with a center building that was used for showers and bathrooms. Well, one night, one of my campers, about 12 years old, asked to go to the bathroom. And just as we had all gotten into bed, of course, and I tell him to take his bunkmate and go quickly. The bathroom building is about 100 feet away. The kids are kind of dorking around like kids do, and they take off for the bathroom running. All of a sudden, I hear screams that still haunt me. Hysterical choking for air, horror movie sounds and screams. I jump up and run out and see the two boys sitting on the ground right outside the bathrooms, and they're kind of holding each other. After a few minutes, they calm down enough and say they ran through a man. They say he appeared right before they got to the bathroom door. He was standing in the doorway and they didn't have enough space to stop. And they put their hands up to go through him and into the door. They said there was cold air around him, and that was it. He was gone. They said he had a suit on and a black, slicked back hair, and he was smiling. Well, we had to call their parents, and they both went home the next morning. No kid goes home from summer camp, man, and it still freaks me out. That's a terrible prank to play on some kids. I do think it's probably a very real thing. I don't mean prank in that somebody's putting them on or putting on a ruse. I think they really experienced that, but it's obviously was done very intentionally by, whatever this spirit was doing. I guess it must be a great fun when you're sitting around bored to freak people out. It's like the national pastime for apparitions out there. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I really don't know. But, if it was smirking, that it was trying to really give them a hell of a story. But very weird. The next one is an alien encounter. I got to remember to keep an eye on the time, actually, don't I? Because I'm on a schedule now tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm kind of out of practice here since we took last weekend off from the network. As we were in Coloma, Montana, investigating a ghost town. And, investigating ghost and Bigfoot stuff. There was both investigations going on. We, our team, were pretty much focused on the paranormal But there was another team run by our good friend Duke Sullivan who was doing a lot of Bigfoot research. So there was a lot going on up there this weekend. It was a great time. Once again, thank you to everybody who took the time to come out there. Some listeners came and joined us, Cha-Cha, Titan, and Justin, as well as MCAT, who's a paranormal investigator and a listener. They all came out to join Don and I at Duke's invitation. So we had a wonderful time, and there'll be information and shows coming up that will deal with those experiences and what we ran into and some things that we checked into while we were there. Some pretty cool things, some great instrumental transcommunication. We did some instrumental transcommunication. It's called ITC. It's an investigative technique with spirits, and we got some really, really wild replies. A handful of personal experiences that people experienced, feeling tugging, the spider webs feeling that's often associated with spiritual activity, and a hell of a lot of sound files that don't make a lot of sense, but we'll get into that on future shows. There's a lot of material to go through. We'll bring it to you as quickly as we can, but stay tuned for that. There's a lot of great stuff coming. All right, so let's get to the next one. Let's see, where was it? Oh, the visit from a jungle spirit. Says, I was working at a survey station deep in the Malaysian jungle of Borneo. 4 hours in 4x4s to reach this spot from the nearest village. Sorry, just a sec. Okay, gotcha, Taco. Thank you. I heard a little bit about that, but we'll talk. I was sleeping in one of the dorms with some of the rangers and we were working with. 5 people total in the dorm that night, and I was having a nightmare and woke up about 2 a.m. to the sound of footsteps outside. Whatever it was fairly big and sounded bipedal. It stopped right outside the window, so I'm staring back at the window, trying hard to see, pitch black in the whole station since it runs on solar power, and the batteries give out at around midnight. Suddenly, one of the rangers shifted in her bed, making a noise, and I could hear whatever it was running away quite fast. Being a rather skeptical person in general, I woke up and asked the rangers the next day about it. Well, they adamantly believe that it was a jungle spirit coming to check us out. The station stood on stilts so that the window sits about 10 feet off the ground. I asked about the possibility of it being a wild animal, but they said that the only things big enough to make that loud of a footprint would have been sun bear, which is a small bear, or a cloud leopard, usually very silent. And they said it's generally unheard of for those animals to make it that close to the survey station, since usually there are people milling about. The rangers have heard the footsteps before, and they firmly believe that a jungle spirit was roaming around that site. I don't think so. I don't think so at all. Of course, it's Borneo, so that's in Malaysia. There's several bipedal hominids believed to live in those ranges. The Ibu Gogo is one. The Orang Pendek is another. And there's even some other ones that are more obscure. And I don't know. I mean, why would a spirit be thumping around? I don't know. Is it possible it's spiritual? Sure. But that behavior is so consistent with Bigfoot reports and Yowie reports and of the like. And so it seems to be this curiosity that these hominids exhibit with whatever the hell we're doing. And if you think about it, if they are somewhere in our neighborhood of intelligence, and there's a big, huge argument about what that means. But let's say they're kind of intelligent, almost human intelligent. I bet you they probably are really interested in what we're doing. And so there's so many reports out there of Bigfoot watching TV through windows, gazing into windows to see what people are doing, spying on campers and people camping because it's new, it's different. It's, they're living out in the wilds, and they've seen everything the wilds have, thousands of times. So I'm sure the big entertainment is us. And, we've certainly heard that from another number of people. Duke has mentioned that. Bear of the Bigfoot Outlaws has mentioned that to us, that we are their entertainment. And many, many other researchers and enthusiasts believe that these beings, these creatures, whatever they are, I don't like the term creatures because I think I don't know, it kind of diminishes the amazing thing that they are. But I think that they are curious about us. They want to know, what are we doing? What does our stuff do? What is it? What happens when we do things, and how do we get things done? And I think they find incredible entertainment with that. So if you're out in a remote jungle somewhere that potentially has these roughly human-sized hominids around, it makes perfect sense to me that they would be coming in to check out what the people are doing. Especially in a remote jungle of all places. So I don't agree with that jungle spirit idea at all, because it's a behavior that we hear of so often with the relic hominids or whatever the hell Bigfoot and Yowies are. We hear that stuff all the time, that they come in and they watch and they observe, and they maybe even count coup on us. Who knows? But this is a perfect example of those kind of behaviors. So I don't think that was a spirit probably at all. That's my 2 cents, but it's my show and you get that here. I got a microphone and I'm going to fill it with my opinion, whether you like it or not. So the next one is an alien encounter. And this one is, my fiance and I went camping in Sequoia National Forest to celebrate our engagement this summer. We were sitting around our fire, marveling at the stars and pointing out constellations. I pointed out a slow-moving satellite traveling through the field we were watching. And as we followed it, we noticed another satellite above it traveling in a parallel line. Well, we were mildly amused, thinking, oh, how cool, how weird. And we followed them with our fingers for a minute. And then, as we both watched, the second satellite stopped abruptly, changed directions, picked up speed, and 2 seconds later sped off in a completely different angle and was gone. The original satellite continued along its original speed and angle, and we just stared at each other open-mouthed. I'm not going to say it was aliens, but it was aliens. Now, I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, and I don't know if it's necessary to use night vision binoculars, but I have a pair, and I oftentimes will go out and observe the night sky. And I've seen that so many times. I can't begin to tell you how many times. Even when we were up at Coloma this last weekend, Michael, Matt, and I were using night vision, and the Duke was there with us. We were using the night vision scopes. Mike has one as well. And we were watching the sky. And I noticed I came upon this one anomaly, and I only noticed it by chance. And I was just panning slowly over the star field, and I caught this flash of light. I was like, well, what was that? So I stopped, and I watched. 10 seconds later, another flash of light, and then nothing. And I'm watching, and this cycle repeated for a couple of minutes, if not more. There was just this one stationary object that every 10 seconds would flash. And it was 10 seconds because I counted it out to figure out how long the gap was between these flashes. Unmoving, locked in that same position. Well, then suddenly it lit up. And it's this little dot of light up in the sky, and it started moving. And I tried to get Michael's attention, but he had a pocket laser, and I was able to use that and point up in the night sky and show him exactly where it was, and then he caught it, and we tracked it. So this object was sitting up in the sky, absolutely unmoving, with only an indicator of light flashing every 10 seconds. Otherwise, it was sitting absolutely obscured in the night sky. Suddenly, the light came on and stayed on, and then it started its trajectory across the sky. Now, I don't know. I've heard there's all kinds of different satellites. Perhaps it's a satellite. Perhaps it's some other kind of satellite, if you know what I'm saying. Some other program, maybe. But to my knowledge, satellites are generally on a fixed trajectory through the sky. There are some that are simply fixed in space, and they stay there. But there are others that orbit. But I don't think they normally do both. Now, I'm not an expert, and anybody could, correct me, and that's fine. I don't pretend to know, but what I observed was a really weird anomaly. Is it for sure something extraterrestrial or something else? I don't know. I mean, I have no way to know. I just know that I can't identify whatever that was. True story, really happened. Unable to record it. I wasn't recording with my camera at the same time through the binoculars, so it's not recorded anywhere except in my head, but it was observed also by Michael, at least from the point that it lit up and moved across the sky. So I can't explain it, but I did see it. Now, I see those kind of things all of the time. I mean, it's a pretty regular occurrence to see these weird, for lack of a better term, satellites going across the sky. It's also not uncommon to see a couple of them come together and miss each other just by a fraction, by a small fraction. And I've watched them like, I'm going to watch two satellites hit each other, and then they just miss each other, but they don't waver in their pattern. They don't slow, they don't speed up. They, in those situations, they just come from different angles and crisscross in the sky. I don't know what the hell that is, but as far as I know, that's not standard behavior for satellites. They're on a pretty regulated path and trajectory for a reason, because these things are billion-dollar satellites up in space. They don't want them crashing. So I don't know, but I've witnessed that, so I believe completely what these people experienced, because I have seen that myself. Now we got about a minute before break, and we're going to come back from break and hit the last two that are on this list. So we'll continue on our journey through the paranormal portal in just a moment. But again, I want to mention that if you're enjoying the shows here on TFR tonight, stick around, because next up is Paisley Wild, The Spaces Between, coming up next. And that's bound to be a great show, because she does a great show. She's a dear friend, and we're really thrilled to be helping her raise awareness of her show. I mean, she does a great job. Very, very wonderful host, conscientious, courteous, caring. She really loves what she's doing. So if you don't mind, please help support what she's doing, because she's putting out the best show, one of the best shows for sure. I mean, the thing with TFR is the whole network is just peppered with these amazing people, and it's a real thrill to be a part of it for me, because, this is where I started. I started right here on TFR, so it's a real honor to be a part of the family. But we'll be right back in just a couple minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away for more of the Paranormal Portal in just a moment.
your protection from deception.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Half hour number 2 is already upon us here on the Paranormal Portal. Thank you all for being here, and more of you are piling in, and it's just making me feel all warm and snuggly. So, group hug, bring it in. Let's go. No. But we are off to the races. We've already got 1.5 hour under our belt. The night is flying by, as always, but thank you so much for being here and being a part of the journey. The phone lines are always open, so if you've got something to share of your very own, 720-923 0500 is the number for fun right here on the Paranormal Portal. So if you call it in, I will answer, or at least as quickly as I become aware of it, which is subjective as hell, but I'll do my best. So we are going through an article from ranker.com, and these are some creepy forest ranger stories. The next one, is this the last one? No, I got 2 more left. So there's 2 more left on this list. So let's get through these. And the first one is, heard a drum beat near a sacred rock. It says, a place I've vacationed at since I can remember is at the tip of the Mitt in Michigan and on the Huron shore. Up the beach from the campground, there's a giant rock called Sacred Rock. It was used as an altar for animal sacrifices by the Native Americans and was also used to mark territory. Well, it's a spot we hang out in all the time while growing up. One time when I was a teenager, we headed up there to hang out and go for a night swim. And after we were done swimming, we all piled on top of the rock to hang out and just talk. I slowly started to realize that there was a beat, like a drum beat that was thumping through the ground. It was slow, but absolutely steady, never missing a beat. And it felt like when you're at a concert, obviously a bass-heavy band, up close to the stage, and the speakers start making your chest feel strong pressure on them. Or maybe what you could imagine those first steps that rippled the glass of water in Jurassic Park. But I'm pretty sure we all felt it by the scared looks. But not one of us said a word. We just finished up our hanging out a bit sooner than we normally would have and headed back down the beach. We still have not said a word about it even until now. I don't know, it's those places, right? Those sacred places. There's a reason those places are sacred. It's not like the First Nations just said, well, I like that rock, let's make that sacred. They were in tune with the earth. They were in tune with the cycles and spirit of nature. And so if they picked some place as sacred, there's a really good reason for it. And it wasn't just arbitrary. It wasn't like, hey, I like that rock. Let's make that sacred. I called it. It's not how it worked. So I'm sure there must be something else going on with that rock, whether it's a convergence of ley lines or if there's some other significance to it. But energetically, I'm sure they knew exactly why it was sacred. And I think those places have a profound memory of thousands of years of activity for different tribes and, and observance. Much the same way that, it's pretty common that old churches are, have a spirit to them. And the houses do too, don't get me wrong. But those places of reverence and worship are, in my opinion, even more potent than, just homes. And then when we're talking about cultures that have been observing their practices in a given place for thousands of years, well, that's going to have a hell of an imprint on it. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that there's a memory to that land and to that rock, to that area. In fact, it makes perfect sense to me. But there's definitely a spirituality to the earth. I mean, we oftentimes separate ourselves from that. We are the spiritual things, and everything around us is a function for us. And quite honestly, I think that part of the consciousness change and shifting that's going on is people realizing that they're a part of this universal consciousness, and that we resonate within it. And these places are sacred because they are fulcrums or focal points for this natural energy. And so, yeah, I'm sure drum beats could be heard. All right, there's one more on this list, and that is found black magic remnants. Oof, this is a discussion afterwards, I'm going to tell you. It says, I was a ranger at a coastal park in South Carolina down on the islands, and I saw the aftermath of some truly creepy black magic. When you open the park, you also must begin with a complete park tour, including riding down to the beach, and several times in the 2 years I worked there, I came across turkeys chained up and chickens left in homemade crates for the high tide to come in and kill. Strange artifacts would also be scattered around on the crest of where high tide had hit. Everything from random boxes to swatches of clothing would be found. Half the staff that worked there were Gullah. I'm not sure what that is. Gullah. And they would tell me that was black magic, not to be confused with root magic. Black magic would be the bad kind, where you have to sacrifice life and are asked for something bad to happen. Root magic is a good magic, where you're just asking for love, health, luck, etc., and not sacrificing a life. What always freaked me out seeing it and bummed me out to clean it up. That would be a very, I would think, a very risky thing to clean up. The reason being is that, and I don't know, it's just things I've heard, I picked up through the years. I'm no expert on the occult or black magic or anything, but as I understand it, cursed objects are often left at those sites for people to find and pick up in order to perpetuate a curse on somebody. Now, so oftentimes it happens, there's things left, and they're items of value, like a hatchet or a really nice knife or something like that, and somebody picks it up and is like, hey, it's my lucky day. It's like, no, it's not. Don't touch that. Don't pick it up. And perhaps it's more superstition than anything, but what if it's not? Of course, we talk about haunted items and items that are, imbued with an intention that is not good. And I certainly believe that could be transferred to somebody else. So there are such things as curses. I think that cleaning up an area like this would be extraordinarily risky for taking on some really bad mojo for yourself. So I don't know. And again, it's just what I've heard. I don't know this for a fact, but it stands to reason. A lot of these dark practices have everything to do with sowing discord and causing mayhem however they can. So that's pretty creepy. So here's some other stuff. I like these stories about the wild places because, obviously I just came back from Coloma, which is a wild place. And if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, we just did an expedition in cooperation with Duke and World Bigfoot Radio, going over to Coloma, Montana. Don and I went over there, and we met up with several listeners who joined us. And we had a wonderful time, but we investigated. There's a ghost town up on top of this mountain. It's an old mining community that just suddenly disappeared around the 1920s. Just suddenly, everybody was gone. I'm not saying that they disappeared and never to be heard from again, but suddenly everybody left. Could be that the mine just dried up. Could be that World War I had just happened and things were scarce. There was an economy shift that happened. The Great Depression. So many things could be a reason for why it happened. But the problem is there's another community about 4 miles away. It's called Garnett, and it's a really famous ghost town. It's maintained by the Park Service. It's privately owned, but you can pay admission and go tour this ghost town, Garnett. But the one that's 4 miles closer to the civilization, which is Coloma, nobody really knows. Nobody knows what happened up there. But Dan Pruitt and I went up there last year and investigated with Duke and his team, and we had a wonderful time. And we went back this year as the second year, but we had a great time. We really did. I'm really excited to bring some of the stuff that happened, and of course we'll hopefully interview everybody that came with us and as to their experiences and what they thought. That's all going to be coming together, hopefully in the near future, depending on my organization. But I love these wild places, these forgotten places, because there's something more pure about it, and I don't know how to explain that, and I don't even know how to make you understand what that means, but I'm hoping you understand just by me saying that, because there's no modern imprint on it. This ghost town was just left, and it was left to nature to reclaim it. And all of the cabins save one of these 80 or so cabins are all dilapidated and collapsed, but there's one that still stands, although barely. It's got a pretty mean tilt to it. It's probably not going to be standing for a lot longer, but it's that forgotten history that makes it kind of more pure. It's not trounced on or stomped on by today's society. It's not like nobody goes there, but it's a pretty out of the way place. But I think these places like this, they have a different kind of energy. They have a different kind of preservation to them. It's not like the buildings are preserved, and it's not like the area is preserved. It's all reclaimed by the land. But there's not buildings on top of old buildings, and there's not sidewalks on top of the old paths and stuff. The old paths that existed then are still there. They're overgrown, but they're still there, like an echo in time. And I don't know. There's kind of a purity to that. I don't know how else to say it, but these wild places, I think, really preserve that energy. They really preserve that history in a different way, because it's not stomped on by the modern day. It hasn't been overwritten. That energy has not been overwritten. It's just sitting there in the state it was when people left. And so that's what I think is really cool about a place like that. And I think that about the wild places as well. There's not people re-imprinting new things on it. It's just, these are remote things. And so I found another list here that I wanted to get into tonight, and it's called People Who Live in Remote Places Describe the Creepiest Things They've Ever Experienced in the Wilderness. So we're going to get into this, and this is also from ranker.com, ladies and gentlemen. And the first one is, and again, they're not all paranormal, but they're all, well, they are in that they're weird. Paranormal can mean anything not normal. So I don't think we're out of our wheelhouse here if we bump into just some weird stories. But the first one is, they caught a stranger taking creepy selfies in their home. That would be horrible. It says, my husband and I work nights, so I'd be alone. My husband worked nights, rather, and I'd be alone on huge acreage. One night I go into the kitchen to make tea, and I look outside to see the moon, and there was a face on the other side of the window. Well, I scream, and it wakes up my aging husky, who starts to howl. Well, the dude bolts. I call the cops and wait, forever locked in my pantry. The next day, my husband and I ride on horseback our whole property, and we find a small makeshift cabin on the northwest corner. And we find stuff stolen from our laundry line and canned stuff from our kitchen. He had pinned up selfies in the cabin he had taken while in our bed and sitting at our daughter's child-sized dinner table. Oh, God, that's horrible. Oh, Lord. I hope they caught the dude. That's really creepy. That's horrible. Is it paranormal? No, but it's not normal, so it's paranormal, I guess. Lord. All right, the next one. a smiling face in the window 20 feet above the ground. When we first moved here, I kept thinking I'd hear someone walking in the house while I was alone. It's a flood zone, so the house sits on stilts, and you can hear footsteps when anyone walks across the floor. Of course, this is Texas, so I just grab my handgun and go see if someone had come in. Also, my mom-in-law has a key, and when she drops in and leaves things for the family, she sometimes doesn't relock the door. Well, I kept feeling like I was going to walk into a room and someone would be there, just feeling oddly watched all day for a few days. My husband didn't think anything of it, and one night he jumped out of bed, grabbed his handgun, and started going through the house, slamming all the doors wide open. He said he'd heard banging in the kitchen like someone was going through the pantry. He was adamant that he had heard someone, but nothing. The doors were still locked. My niece got home from her grandmother's house and a few nights later asked if she could sleep on a cot in our room. Well, she's a teenager, not a small kid, so I asked her what was wrong. She didn't want to tell us because we wouldn't believe her. She just didn't want to be alone. She said she heard banging in the kitchen, and when she heard that or felt like someone was in the house, she would see a man in the window of her room. So we basically just noped out and came, so she basically noped out and came to us. Well, we let her stay, and the next day we were all a little uneasy. My husband, a notorious non-believer in the paranormal, came in looking shaken and said he had closed the door after bringing her laundry into the room, and a man had been smiling at him from the window. The windows on the house are almost 20 feet in the air because of the stilts it sits on. Yeah, that's horrible. That is totally horrible. I don't know, ladies and gentlemen, what would you do? What would you do? You look out your window. Now that reminds me of what the hell is that TV show from a long time ago, and I'm probably dating myself by saying this, but Salem's Lot. There was this one creepy part where this young kid's best friend died. He got bit by a vampire or whatever, and he had been to the funeral and stuff, and he was in his room all bummed out, and suddenly his friend is floating outside of the window saying he wants to come in and play. Now, I was young when I saw that, and that left an impression on me, ladies and gentlemen. I was freaked out. I was freaked the hell out. But when I'm reading this story, that's what I'm seeing in my head is just like, oh, God, what do you do with that? How do you handle that? I don't know. I really don't know. That's all kinds of broken and wrong. So number 3 is a hooded stranger appeared in the house. I grew up in the middle of the woods in Louisiana. Our closest neighbor was 20 miles away. Our house is on a hill, and at the bottom was a creek that ran through the woods for miles and miles. My grandfather would always tell us there were people living in the woods. Crazy, inbred folks, or on some the hills have eyes kind of stuff, but I was always assumed he was just trying to creep us out. So one night, I was like 8 years old. I sat in the living room watching Pearl Harbor, and my father comes into the living room and tells me not to move, that he heard footsteps in the back door slam on his way to the bathroom. He thinks someone was in the house and that he scared them off when he walked down the hallway to the bathroom. So he leaves the house, leaving the front door wide open, which scared the hell out of me. I paused the movie and just listened to silence for a couple of minutes. And of course, the guy is still inside. I'm staring out of the doorway to the living room and see the top of a head peek around the corner. A head with a white sheet over it, cut and tied at the neck. Well, I'm paralyzed. And even if I did wanted to run, there'd be nowhere to go but towards this creepy dude. He just stares at me for what feels like forever before he leaves towards the back of the house. The back door slams again, and I just sit there and start crying until my dad comes back inside. My dad tells me that as he rounded the corner to the back of the house, he caught the guy leaving out the back door, and the guy sees my dad and books it down the hill. Then there's a gunshot. According to Father, my grandfather had been sitting on his porch next door and saw the guy walking towards our house. So he grabbed his gun, got back outside in time to see the guy running down the hill, and shot him in the leg. The guy fell, then got back up again before my grandfather could take another shot, and disappeared into the woods. By the time the cops show up, he's gone. They search, but they can't find the guy. They do a rundown sort of shack. They do find a rundown sort of shack about a mile or so into the woods, filled with nothing but pots and pans. So that was weird. Well, that's creepy. Sometimes those old legends are true. Sometimes there are people that have, for whatever reason, chosen not to be a part of the regular world. And honest to God, I can't blame them sometimes. Sometimes the regular world leaves a lot to be desired, but that kind of stuff is really creepy. Because, they probably have their own rules. They probably have their own ethics and code, and we're not in it. So, I don't know. That is creepy. Of course, everybody's seen the horror movies. The hill people, the backwards people up in the hills that have shunned society and just do their own thing. But, that's horrible. They're breaking into houses. That's creepy. Ugh. This one is, she woke to find a man watching her from the woods. When I was younger, about 5, me and my family lived in a big house that was in the woods. My bedroom was on the first floor with a window about 15 feet wide and 6 feet tall. It was a huge window. It was so oddly large that we could never find curtains and blinds to fit it. So we just had a bare window, which is fine because, like I said, we're in the middle of the woods. Well, I woke up in the middle of the night with that feeling of being watched. And I saw a man wearing all black standing at my window watching me. I screamed, and when I screamed, he ran off into the woods. Jeez. Yeah, that's creepy. So it sounds like a lot of these are actually just these creepy fringe society people that are kind of living on the edge of our world, and they and it's honestly, it's not real far removed. I mean, how many of these maybe weren't a man at all? Maybe they were spiritual. Maybe they were something else. There's a lot of reports of Bigfoots where people say it looked just like a man with a lot more hair, but just like a man. So some of these you just attribute to maybe it's a juvenile Bigfoot. Maybe it's something else that's out there. I mean, we see a silhouette and we think we understand. We see a silhouette, it's a human. If it's up on 2 legs, it must be a human. That's our default. But if you think of the likelihood, how many people are just running around in the woods in the middle of the night? Just running around the woods. I don't know. There's a real reluctance by many people to acknowledge something like Bigfoot too. So it's easier to say, hey, I saw a person staring in my window. Looked like a human, had a human silhouette, so it must have been a human. They don't want to say it's a Bigfoot. So as we're reading these, think about that. Any one of these could be, well, outside of the sheet around the head thing, any one of these could be just a misidentified cryptid, because a lot of people don't want to put that label on it. That's the crazy label for a lot of people. Although, obviously I don't feel that way, but I'm just stating the obvious. Many people aren't willing to acknowledge that there's these other things out there, these other beings that don't fit into the world we recognize. And so they're just people. They're other people. And we dismiss it that way, but I think they're not. I think there's something else. We've got just a couple minutes here. I think I can read this one, and then we're going to go to our hour break. Excuse me. When I lived way out in the middle of nowhere in Australia, nothing but desert outside, nearest neighbors were about 10 kilometers away, our place was at the end of a long dirt road with only our house, no others, so no one came down there unless they were specifically to visit us. While I was taking a bath one night, look up. I see a man's face staring at me through the window. I freaked the hell out and got out of the bath, robe on, etc., and told significant other, who said that I probably just imagined it, especially since that window was so high up, no one could reach it from the outside on the stumps. I made him go look out there, and yes, someone had gone to our shed, which was a good 500 meters away from the house, got some wooden pallets, stacked them up, and peeped through my window. If it were a random peeper in an easier accessible location like a suburb, it probably would have weirded me out a little, but then gotten over it. But the amount of work this guy had to go to makes me remember him to this day and wonder how in the hell he got out there with no car. Did he just live on our property or nearby in the bush somewhere? Yikes. That's creepy. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to our hour break here in just a couple moments. So we'll be right back with more of the Paranormal Portal, so I hope you'll stick around. Just got to pay the bills, got to run the commercials from the network, so those of you on YouTube will be watching one of my video stylings of, I guess it's the ghost stuff. Or no, the Ouija board stuff, yeah. All right, so don't go away. We'll be right back.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, dripping scars across my heart. Raging anger pours inside me as their lies keep falling apart.
A nightmare from which they cannot wake. Caroline is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeist are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are of fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
And years, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Hour number 2 is upon us here on the Paranormal Portal. So, hope you're ready for more of this fun-filled adventure that we got cooking tonight. I know I am. I'm having a good time. I always just love these nights. I love doing the show. What can I say? You'd think that would be a given, but honest to God, I mean, it does get to be a lot of work. It really does get to be a lot of work at times, but it's just always so exciting every time I turn it on and just get ready to go. And I'm always so tickled to see all the people that come in to watch. It's just so humbling, and it's such an honor. So I hope that I'm making it all worth your time. Excuse me, a little froggy today. What else is new? All right, so we're going to continue on this storyline of these weird things people in remote places have seen. Again, it's coming from ranker.com. This one is called An Irish Stalker Followed This Child for Miles. That's terrible. Ugh. Well, anyway, we'll read it since it's on the list, but this is, there's some things that are sacred, and, obviously this goes without saying, but children are sacred. And the fact that there's types of people that prey upon that, it just breaks my heart. But anyway, let's see what this one is. It says, when I was young, my grandmother lived in a very rural part of Ireland, and my brother and I were sent to visit her for a couple of weeks every summer. Frequently, my grandmother would send us out to do little jobs for her, bringing bread or jam to the neighbors or to collect turf for the fire. One summer's day, she gave me a loaf of bread and sent me to a house about 3 or 4 miles away. The laneway to the house was narrow and lined by thick hedges, and as I was walking, I became aware of a man within the hedges who was watching me and walking the laneway with me. I was extremely frightened and ran the rest of the way, and I think the woman of the house knew that something had frightened me when I arrived. She made me tea and sandwiches with my grandmother's bread and let me stay and play with her dogs until her eldest son got back so he could drive me back to my grandmother's house. Thanks, Mrs. Staunton. I still don't know who it was that was watching and following me, or how long they had been doing so before I finally noticed. Yeah, that's creepy. Jesus. Ugh. All right. This one is, they heard a blood-curdling scream over and over. So this is real common for cryptids and Bigfoot, and also for wildlife. There's some wildlife that just has the most haunting sounds. Fox, of course, have a real high-pitched squeal and yip and stuff. And I think a lot of times people just are not familiar with some of the noises out there. that exist very naturally. They're not supernatural. They're not paranormal. They're just these weird noises. But I will say that a lot of cryptids make really weird noises. There are, of course, you listen to the Sierra Sounds and Ron Moorhead's work and his team, and it gives you chills. It just gives you chills because whatever you're listening to, when you listen to those, it's a language. It's a complex and very detailed language, and very fast and guttural, and using a whole range of sounds and vocal range. And it kind of feels, I would say to me, it feels a little uncomfortable because there's nothing in there that approximates speech as we recognize it, you know. But then again, if you go to another country, if you've never heard a certain dialect and you'd go there, it would be confusing as well. So, I mean, it is a language. I have no doubt about that. So I guess it's just the unfamiliar is always hard for us. So this one is a very short one, and it says, hold on. My significant other and I lived in a small cabin up in the Appalachian Mountains on an isolated 40-acre plot. It was our first week in the cabin, and sometime in the middle of the night, we heard a blood-curdling scream right outside of our window. Not just once, but over and over again for about a minute. See, now that's horrible. It's right outside your window. That's a whole different kind of weird. It's bad enough when those screams are off in the distance somewhere. That's uncomfortable. But if it's right outside your window, whatever's making that noise is just separated from you by a wall. And that's horrible. I don't know. That's one thing I haven't heard a lot of is just those kind of screams and sounds. I've heard fox before. I had a fox that kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, just kind of adopted me. He just came up to me one day and was really sweet, and I could feed him from my hand, and it was this really cool experience. I'd hear him yipping on the hills. He would run up and down the hill yipping, and he and his brood, or her brood, I don't know if it was male or female, but they're very incredibly smart creatures. But I've also heard some of the recordings that people have made of something else out there. And I think a lot of the haunted woods stories probably have more to do with some kind of other being out there than they do a ghost. I think that some of the tormented screams are, well, they could be natural fauna too, don't get me wrong. Again, there's something that's supposed to sound, and I can't remember what it is for the life of me, but there's some natural animal that's supposed to sound like a woman screaming, and I can't remember what it is, but I think that a lot of times those sounds just take people by surprise. They don't sound like what we think they sound like. You know, they're just a natural call that some of these creatures make. But I've also heard screams that people have recorded that I can't tell what they are, but I can tell you that if they were coming closer, I'd be packing my bags and being the hell out of there before they got to wherever I was. It's just such a, I don't know, it's like a contrary sound. You hear some sounds and it just makes you go, nope, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see what makes this sound. I don't want to. Now, another one that's kind of creepy, and I don't know, again, whenever you find pieces and parts of paranormal evidence online, you've got to really regard them with a lot of skepticism, because there's a lot of people that think it's just awesome to put out hoax and a bunch of crap. They get a real kick out of creating false stories and videos and stuff. But these are allegedly rakes that I've heard, and they have this real weird, I don't know, like screeching sound, but it's like it's like as if you were sucking in air and using your vocal cords. It's like this real screamy, whiny sound. Now, it can be mimicked. Every one of the rake sounds that I've heard could be mimicked by somebody who knows how to draw in breath and screech at the same time. It's something I used to do as a kid, so it doesn't sound really that awkward to me. But if it is truly the sound of a rake, and it's not just somebody screeching as they're inhaling, that is horrible. That's a horrible sound. But I think if I heard that sound, I would just be like, somebody screwing around. But if you're out in the middle of nowhere and there's nobody else supposed to be around, then maybe I would, then maybe I'd be less likely to think it was just a person. So the next one is, it sounded like a pig squeal right next to them. It says, my grandparents' house is right outside of town. A neighborhood is on one side, and all the other sides, everyone has an acre or two that they're sitting on, including my grandparents. So it's isolated-ish. Excuse me. A friend and I were smoking cigarettes in the large enclosed porch one night, and when no one was home, and in the complete silence, we heard a really loud pig squeal right next to us. It sounded like it was in the enclosed area with us. It was so loud. Sure, people have horses and chickens around, but I don't think any of the neighbors own pigs. Also, it didn't quite sound like a pig. More like a man making a pig noise. I can't emphasize this enough because it was one of the weirdest sounds I've ever heard. The scariest thing was how displaced the sound was. I mean, even if their next door neighbor had a pig, it would have been far away enough to be a lot quieter. Well, we bolted inside and locked the doors immediately. Yeah, it's those weird sounds. How do you process that if it's not a sound you're familiar with? Yeah. You go and you close the doors, that's how. This one is, someone started scratching a trailer in the middle of nowhere. My dad owns a plot of land in south central Illinois. It consists of crop fields and woods, and my dad's nephew, call him T, and his wife B, live in a trailer next to an auction barn they own. One night B was home and their porch faces the road, and they have a street light by their circle drive on their ground, not the road, and B saw a silhouette walk across the porch. His shadow was visible on the door and window. She later heard scratching on the screen of the window, and she had enough. She grabbed T's handgun and opened the door. There was no car in the circle drive other than her own. She screamed something like, "I've got a gun and I'm not afraid to kill you." The scratching stopped. That's the whole story. It just stopped. So it could be a spiritual thing. Sounds intelligent enough to know, okay, they're pissed. But this one is, that's creepy. They found a little girl's possessions literally in the middle of nowhere. When I was about 13 and exploring the woods, I found a pillowcase with a jewelry box, a bunch of cheap kids' jewelry, a couple keychains, a school idea for a girl in 4th grade. I don't know what a school idea, or ID, it must mean ID, but they just had the word idea spelled out. A school ID for a girl in 4th grade and a couple of other little girl things. I didn't think much of it at the moment, but a couple of days later I went back to get it, and it was gone. I still wish I could remember the girl's name or even the school she went to, because I have the feeling something horrible happened. I grew up in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas, 10 miles outside of town. That doesn't even have a stoplight, so just so you guys have a picture of how rural it was. The scariest sound I've ever heard is a mountain lion scream. You can never get used to that sound. And maybe that's the sound I was trying to think of before. Maybe it is a mountain lion that screams much like a woman. Which is a haunting sound. A scorched tree was gone the next day. This one sounds interesting. It says, so I live in a very heavily wooded area. This is a place where the closest town is 7 miles away, and it's only got about 100 people in it. So my family and a few neighbors are very secluded. Anyway, when I was about 12-ish, I was sitting on my front porch eating mac and cheese because it was a nice day outside. And while I'm eating, I noticed something sort of strange in the woods in front of our house. I had sat on my front porch so many times that I was used to how the view looked. So I immediately noticed that the view looked different. probably about 150 feet in front of our house, was a giant black mass. At first I thought it may be a black bear, as they're fairly common here. Being the adventurous kid that I was, I went to investigate. But as I got close to it, I could see that it was actually a giant burnt black stump, root wad and all. It had been totally scorched, so the entire thing was pitch black. And it was massive. It must have easily weighed about 200 pounds. This was strange, as we hadn't cut down any trees lately, and we certainly hadn't burned any stumps. I showed my mom, and she was equally confused as well, but just kind of brushed it off. After school the next day, I went to check on it again with my dogs, but when I got to the spot, it was gone. A giant 200-pound stump had just vanished, and there was no drag marks or anything. So is that a time slip? Is that some kind of potentially a time slip or some kind of Mandela thing? I don't know. That's very strange. It's obviously not a thing of value. It's just a burnt stump. Why was it suddenly there, and then why was it suddenly gone again? That's why I think there's so much that we just don't understand. The next one is the scent of cologne was like being followed. I used to live in the middle of nowhere, and we had one neighbor whose house we couldn't even see through the trees and hills. It was on the other side of us, up another hill. There was a dirt road that basically went nowhere. At the beginning of the dirt road, there was this old abandoned church, which made it automatically creepy. Anyway, berries used to grow down this dirt road, so we'd go and pick them. And on the way back one day, we got an extremely strong scent of cologne. A quick scan didn't show anyone, but every time the wind blew, we would get another whiff. Still don't know where the scent was coming from, but it creeped me out big time. You don't think about how no one could hear you scream until you're forced to. Yeah, that's true. I mean, what would you do? I guess that's the other side of it, right? There's a beauty of living out away from people and away from the problems of our societies and stuff. But if things go sideways, how do you handle that? Well, I guess you got to handle it yourself because nobody's coming to help you. All right, this next one is this manic neighbor showed up with a shotgun. Probably not very paranormal, but definitely not normal. I live out in the country, and there are maybe 5 houses on my long dirt road. Last week, my neighbors asked if he could come over to talk to us about something. He didn't knock, just walked in with a loaded gun with him. He started talking a mile a minute about a war coming to our road, knowing people who are 300 years old, vampires, walking out of the woods, being able to see the matrix code, etc. He had a hospital bracelet on his wrist, and it turns out he decided to go off of his medication and was now in manic depressive state. Yeah, that's not a good thing. Oh, wow. That's like juggling a hand grenade. That's terribly sensitive. All right, random barbed wire in the woods causes injuries. Now, I've come across some random barbed wire here and there, and I think honestly it's just old defunct pastures. I was out mushroom hunting here in the woods and kind of in the middle of nowhere and just ran across barbed wire. It's like, what the hell is this doing out here? But I think it's just land that was reclaimed, and maybe somebody was trying to graze cattle, and so they penned them into a certain area, and whatever happened, they didn't continue to do it, but their fences just kind of remain out in the woods and stuff. So it's not really uncommon. But as a kid, we had the free range of the woods behind my friend's house, and it was out pretty much in the middle of nowhere, and we could go out there for hours and never see another soul. One time, one of the younger kids, we One of the younger kids ran straight into barbed wire and got his whole front cut up because he hadn't been wearing a shirt. It was really weird because it was just in the middle of the woods. So why was there barbed wire hung at the height of a 7-year-old could run into? Again, I would just think it must have been some defunct pasture land. That stuff doesn't just rot away. I mean, barbed wire takes a long time to decompose into, its metallic elements. So I don't know that that's very unusual. It's just incredibly unfortunate that some kid ran into it, but not necessarily that weird. Hello, Andy Gone Fishing. Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. I'm just looking up. Good to see you, Bomber. And everybody else. Hello, Black Tree. Good to see you. Duke. I'm just seeing all the names pop up on the YouTube. Good to see you guys. He stumbled upon a crazy man in Italy. I live in the Adriatic coast of Italy. One summer night of 2013, I was with some friends on the beach having a party when at about 1 a.m., I climbed the rocks to find a place to go to relieve myself, is what I'll say. There was a full moon and I could see really clearly. I walked away from the beach until I saw a small cove, a sandy bay, invisible from the inland, but easily reachable from the rocks, and I thought it was the best spot to relieve my bladder, and went there. As I neared, I distinctively saw that there was a man, a fat, very big man in his 50s, sitting in the sand doing absolutely nothing, his head tucked into his arms. I should have known better, but I moved closer and asked if he needed anything, thinking he might have been feeling unwell, and he raised his bull-like head and started screaming madly to get away from him, lest he killed me by cracking your head on the rocks. Well, I scrambled and ran like crazy back to my friends. I turned backwards, and I was relieved to find that he wasn't following me. We called the police, who came and discovered that he was a mentally ill person who hadn't taken his medications, and his family had declared missing in the afternoon. They managed to reassure him without resorting to violence and escorted him back to his habitation, I guess. They forgot an H. And it was the only time that I really feared for my life. Seems to be the meds things is coming up tonight, huh? Pretty creepy stuff. I often wonder about that, and I don't pretend to know what that would be like, but it's got to be a pretty scary place to have a condition that just absolutely perverts your view of reality. That, the world that everyone else is living in is not comfortable to you, and you see things completely different, and you see things going on around you that may or may not be there. I mean, I think we all go through our lives at some point or another and say, am I crazy? Am I losing it? And maybe we do. Maybe we do lose it every once in a while. I'm not sure, but I think that's got to be a pretty scary place to live. And, of course, the horror stories. We all know about the pharmacologies and stuff like that, and the obvious risks and health issues that arise from being on a medication all of the time. But very, very sad thing, I think. I think that's very sad when people are in such a state that's their life. Their life is never going to be, quote unquote normal, but definitely pretty scary. All one put up this this GIF in the TFR chat. That's cracking me up. That's hilarious. That guy means business. Oh God, I can never be prepared. I gotta brace myself before I check the chats. Oh dear God. All right, so we got a lot more to get into yet tonight, but we are running up to the last break here, so we're about a minute out. Again, I would like to urge everybody, if you're listening to this program, please remember that after the portal, the Paisley Wild comes up next on TFR iHeart. Tune in and TalkStream Live with her The Spaces Between show, and it's a wonderful show. It's her pagan journey, and you can learn a lot. She covers everything on there, from energy to crystals to philosophy to lifestyle, and it's really a fantastic job. She does a really comprehensive and thorough job discussing this. And then, of course, after that, I think the Duke comes up with World Bigfoot Radio on TFR iHeart. Tune in and TalkStream Live as well. And of course, we all know the Duke. The Duke, he brings it. And once again, we will be doing some shows in the very near future, going over our evidence and experiences from Coloma. We'll have MCAT on, Cha-Cha on, Titan will come on, as well as Justin, and talk about their experiences, what they thought, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if we'll do it live or if we'll pre-record it, one or the other. I'm going to work with Don and try to figure out what the best approach would be. But I'm really looking forward to bringing that to you guys, because we really had a fantastic time. There's just a lot to get through. So, speaking of getting through, let's go get through the break. We'll be right back in just a couple minutes, ladies and gentlemen, for the last half hour of our show tonight. Don't go away. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas. Just that last half hour now. Wow, it went really pretty quick. I hope you guys enjoyed the ride so far. We got a little bit left to go, so don't go away quite yet. Love to keep you here. I also would like to say that Paisley Wild also does stream her program not only on TFR, iHeart, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live, but she also has a YouTube page, youtube.com/the spaces between. So you can check out her live stream as well if that's where you'd rather hang out. It's all up to you. We just love when people come in and hang out wherever you like to hear the shows. So I got an article here that I want to go through with you guys. Now, this one is a little bit different. This is just more of the spiritual variety, but it's a topic that we don't it comes up all the time. But I found this article I thought might be good. It's from paranormaldailynews.com, and it has to do with the shadow people. And it's an overview of the shadow people. And I think this one is interesting, and I haven't pre-read this, so we're going to read it together. But, the shadow people is a term that gets used really generically, because if you see a ghost and the ghost appears dark and shadowy, then it's a shadow person, is the common idea. Now, I would say that that's not true, nor is it accurate. I think that spirits can appear however they choose to appear. Sometimes they'll appear maybe in their death state. Sometimes they'll appear as mist, as an orb, and sometimes just as a shadowy presence. And I think that's because they a lot of times it can be because they're trying not to, make themselves obvious or over the top, make people aware of them. It isn't necessarily a description of their nature, and I think that that's where it kind of goes sideways. Now, I do believe very much that there is a specific type of being that we experience spiritually. That is what a shadow person is. There is a type of spiritual being that appears as these humanoid shadows, and for all intents and purposes, most people regard them as negative. Some people say that they're benign. Maybe there's some of both. Now, a long time ago, Don had dug up some information from a gentleman who trained as a shaman in a First Nations tribe. It was an appearance that he made on a Coast to Coast with Art Bell back in the day. But he discussed shadow people as more of this benevolent presence, and in that they feed on negative energy, and as such their presence and appearances can be very utilitarian, because of course negative energy can cause diseases, can cause physical health problems, can cause any number of issues, and the visits of these shadow people is actually benevolent in that they take away that energy, they cleanse that energy, and they use it for whatever it is they use it for. Now, I don't know. I've heard both sides of the spectrum. I don't know which is right, and maybe they're both right, because we could be talking about, again, more than one kind of being here in that one blanket term, shadow people. But it comes up a lot, so I thought it'd be fun to dig into it a little more here on the show. So this is, again, from paranormaldailynews.com. It's an article called Shadow People by Moselle Martin. And it could be Martin Moselle. I don't know how that works, if the Moselle is the first name or the last name. But Mozelle. And he says, at 9 years old, I was always fascinated. Let me put it up on screen because there is some images involved here. So I was always fascinated by the boiler room in our basement. Growing up in a very haunted 1800s Victorian hotel, I was obsessed with that room. My tummy cramped very badly each time I was near the room, but I still persisted. Staring, my eyes alternated between the actual boiler and the walls, sometimes for hours. The only lighting in this cement room was the glow from the boiler's pilot light. Eventually, I started seeing random flashes of light. At other times, lights would slowly go across the walls like a spider. Initially, when I tried to visually follow the lights, they would suddenly vanish, as if someone turned them off. At other times, I was able to follow them until they went around the corner or through a crevice. The more I went into this room, the more frequent these lights became. Eventually, I met my first shadow people. When I first saw the shadow, I thought my parents were behind me. And when I turned to look, nobody was there. The basement was not accessible to host hotel guests due to the door being locked, and I had access to the only key. But then I thought maybe it was my own shadow, but I was standing still while they were still moving. One day I felt as if a shadow man was staring back at me. Obviously, I could not see his face, but it felt chilling. Just then, my tummy cramped, as it always did whenever I was in danger, so I yelled, "Go away! Leave me alone!" And then I ran out of the room. For a week, I avoided the basement unless my mom was with me. Even though I felt scared, my obsession increased. Finally, after giving in to my obsession, I grabbed a Polaroid camera and returned to the basement. My intention was to take just one picture of the shadow people and then show my picture to my adoptive parents. Well, after taking a bunch of pictures, I went upstairs and laid them on the kitchen table, and I anxiously awaited in anticipation of seeing a shadow person. And just then, my parents walked in. After seeing 30 pictures of an ugly boiler, they became very angry with me for wasting 3 packs of Polaroid film. I tried to tell them both what I'd been experiencing, and they said that I was dreaming and that what I claimed to see was absolutely impossible. I insisted that what I was seeing was very real, and they told me to stop lying. As a result, they did everything in their power to prevent me from going back down there, including hiding the key. However, as a sly child, I saw where they put it. I didn't mention it for a couple of months, and because I had always loved taking pictures, I begged for a camera of my own. For Christmas that year, I received a Canonette. I was excited because while my parents, though, thought I had forgotten about the boiler room, I actually hadn't. Armed with my new camera, I headed into the boiler room. I waited until they went to bed and spent all night down there, almost every night. After repeated attempts over several months' time, I finally ended up with the photo I wanted so desperately. Jeez. One area that I've always been scared of alongside the boiler room was a short hallway that led to some narrow steps, which led to an unknown location. My father, who was 6 foot and 195 pounds, could not fit in there. My mom, who was 5'2" and 130 pounds, could barely fit in there. So I knew at 4'11" and 88 pounds that I could, and despite my fearful resistance, that increased my desire to do so. Off and on during the previous months of trying to capture Shadow Person on film, I had seen round, white, semi-transparent circles floating in and out of the camera's frame. I even saw a few with my naked eye, but was so focused on the shadow people that I initially ignored the white circles. One evening, during a typical overnight stay in the boiler room, I saw a very large white circle. It appeared the size of a baseball. Because it was so big and moving toward the scary area next to the boiler room, I decided to go too. I grabbed the flashlight from the boiler room and followed the circle down the hallway. Partway up the stairs, my cramps were replaced with a tickly butterfly flutter and an ice cold chill. I sat down on the steps and folded my shirt up over my now crossed arms. I was feeling lightheaded and unable to move. To date, it was one of the most bizarre feelings I've ever experienced. Then, just as suddenly, I became extremely hot. I started sweating behind my neck and on my forehead, and my armpits were sticky. The heat increased, and a desperate urge to find someplace cool came over me, as if I was suffocating. I knew if I went back towards the boiler room, I would be even hotter, so the only other way to go now was up. I slowly continued up the steps and then stopped to look down the tunnel. I noticed several small white circles moving, and they looked like bubbles. I then saw several semi-transparent gray human-shaped lights, but told myself that was impossible. Still distracted by the noticeably cold air and still sweating, I continued. Once through the tunnel, I noticed another narrow entrance leading into what appeared to be a very dark space. By this time, the bubbles disappeared, and I was no longer sweating. That's a creepy picture. Let's see. As I got closer to this narrow entrance, I started to feel like I was walking into a private space, a place where I wasn't supposed to be. My tummy didn't ache, but I had this weird feeling that there were people in there. I listened, but I didn't really hear anything. How could people be in there, and why would they want to live in such a creepy place? I stopped and looked all around me. My mind told me to leave, but my heart told me to keep going. I'd never felt so confused or energetically paralyzed. I felt like I was watching myself from behind. I knew I could never begin to explain this to my parents. They didn't believe me now, so I knew that I was all alone in this experience too. My mind started racing, and even if I screamed, nobody would hear me. It's in the middle of the night. My parents and the hotel guests are floors above me and asleep, and I am in some dark cave somewhere. I am doomed if I can't get out. My parents would never think of looking for me in this area. They had hidden their key when I had gotten into trouble, and they did not know that I knew where it was. I started panicking. I came too far to not continue. I just had to know who was in that room. The room was approximately 10 feet square, and all I saw was old toilet and plumbing parts on one side and a couple of sticks and feathers on the other side, which were laid out in a cross shape. I was so mentally exhausted that all I could do is just sit on the floor, and thankfully nobody was in there. I ended up falling asleep for a short time, but was soon woken by the sounds of kids' voices. When I could finally focus my eyes, I saw 4 kids and a bunch of babies. They were semi-transparent, just like the bubbles that I had followed in there. And when I tried to stand up, they vanished. "Who are you?" said a voice that sounded like mine. I couldn't believe that I asked someone a question. A someone that was not really there. Was my mind playing tricks on me, or was I dreaming? Feeling thankful that nobody was around to hear me, I shut my eyes again, hoping to wake up from this dream. It wasn't a dream. This time I heard various voices, a trailing whisper. Luella, Dolores, Nancy, Sarah. I jumped up and looked around, but nobody was there. I ran out of the room through the narrow doorways, down the steps, through the short hallway and back into the boiler room, and up to my bedroom safe and sound. As I lay in my own bed under the covers, I could hear my heartbeat, which sounded like it was still running and trying to catch up with me. Not being able to sleep, I sounded out the names and drew what I saw. So there it is. Those are the collections of sticks and feathers. And a lot of babies. That's weird. I don't know. It's a strange story. But really creepy photos. Wow. This person's got some real intestinal fortitude. This one is very interesting. I don't know for sure what we're looking at here, but it's obviously supposed to be a shadow person. And if it is truly a capture, it's a pretty good one. Wow. I assume these are photos this person had taken. And those being the shadow steps or the steps to that little room. Very strange, though. I don't know. What do you think, guys? Is that about the shadow people? I think it was a good, very well written. I like the narrative. The story sounds good. I really am impressed, though. That person could stick it out. and push past that fear. And I think that's maybe the key to really solid investigating, is pushing past those scary parts. And you have to wonder, are the scary parts ours, or are they a trigger that's set up, an energetic psychic trigger to cause people to go back? I mean, I've always been I've always been one to trust my intuition. It's like, get the hell out. Okay, I'm getting the hell out. But you got to wonder, what if you push past that? Is that where the real magic starts, where the real reveal starts? And I'm not claiming to know. I don't know. I don't do a lot of investigating, so I'm not some well-practiced investigator. I'm absolutely enthralled with it, though. I truly am. And this last weekend was a great example. I know when I came home from Coloma a year ago, on the drive home, I was like, I got to get back there. I got to do more of this. This is really something that I love doing. And it was no different this time, other than I slept a lot more coming home because Don was driving. So I slept a lot more. But it was fantastic. It was a great time. I would like to do a lot more of this. We had some really great experiences. I'm really excited to dive into those with you guys and with the other people that were there and experienced it. We also did do the comparison shot. If you're a regular watcher of the show, especially on YouTube, we showed a video that came from the first trip to Coloma when I was there with Dan. I was doing a panning shot, panning around, and up on the rise of tailings behind me, the mine tailings, there was a shadow that ducks down. So we did do a comparison this time, and I still have yet to unpack that. I think Duke's going to help me put that together because that's kind of Duke's thing, and I'm happy to have his help. But he's gonna do a side-by-side comparison of when he and Don were up on that tailings pile versus the shadow that we saw the year before. I think it's, to me, they looked much smaller than the shadow that appears on the footage from last year. So whatever was up there could very well have been much bigger than around 6 feet tall, which is really impressive in my mind. And that'll be coming along with so much more. But I got to tell you, it was just a great time, a great event. And I know that it's the direction I want the portal to go into, a lot more so into the future, because it was not only, I like doing the studio shows. This is something I've always loved doing, and it's very natural for me to just come in and do shows, and that's not, it's not a big feat for me to do that. But these investigations I find are incredible. And also the response that I'm getting from you guys as we go out and do these things, you guys seem to enjoy them as well, which gives me only just so much more enthusiasm to do it, because I've always wanted the show to continue to evolve and develop. It's oftentimes easier said than done, obviously, when you're balancing your whole life and this pursuit as well. But I think we'll be able to get out and do more, hopefully at least one more before the summer's over, we're talking about. And I'm not going to unveil that quite yet because there's a lot of logistics to figure out. But we're going to try to do another one yet this year if we can pull it together. But we're going to bring that to you. Hopefully we can find more locations. Now, the other thing is that I would be thrilled to continue to open these to your guys' participation. Now, as such, with Coloma, obviously we had MCAT come up there, Titan came up there, Justin came up there, and Cha-Cha came up there, and it was really fantastic, and that truly enhanced the whole experience, because we had this camaraderie and this it was just a really great experience for us to have together and to dig into this. And and there's the other point is that the more eyes you have on something, the more ears listening. While it does complicate things on some parts, it gives you more confirmation when things do happen. And that was a real asset in this situation. I'll tell you that the hunting cabin was a lot less creepy this time. when we had the whole crew people up there than when it was when Dan and I were alone. We didn't get the bangs again, but we did get some pretty incredible what appeared to be intelligent responses. So again, that'll all be forthcoming in the future, but we'll definitely look into opening these for listener participation as well, because it's a great opportunity for us to meet all of you all out there if we can, or at least to have a function with listeners in the area. If we can't open up the actual investigation to listeners, we can at least get together with people that might be in the area and would want to make the journey to meet and connect, because it's just a really cool experience. It was an honor to meet everybody that came out, and it was an honor to get out there and do it. We're going to go back to Coloma again, so this is not just a 1 or 2 off kind of thing. The beauty of that, I think, is that as we revisit Coloma, it's going to help us learn how to investigate Coloma, because it's such a large location. There's so much that we needed to do and need to do, and there's so much planning we need to do in advance of our next visit there, because it's such a big area. And you know, I'm I'm not a real practiced hand at this, so some things I think we could have done better, and some things I think went absolutely brilliantly, and a lot of in between. But at the very least, we had a collection of people up there that were just fantastic, fun people, and it was a real honor to meet all of you. So if we do open them up as we travel around and find other locations, I would love to see more of you guys. That to me was the real icing on the cake, which makes me hungry. Now I'm hungry. I want cake. But we'll definitely get into that more and more as we go. So first things first, we'll of course be back tomorrow night. Don will be here with me. I don't know if we'll start unpacking Coloma quite yet. We got a lot to do, and I know Don's been swamped ever since he's been back, so I don't think he's had time to run through much of his footage. But we did review a bunch of it on Wednesday when he was here, and it really got some great stuff. And of course, MCAT recorded a hell of a lot of stuff as well. So we've got a lot of material to dig through in cooperation with other people. Titan was filming as well, and so there's lots to pull together. But anyway, we're about at the tail end of our show. What is it? Let's do Spokon. What's Spokon 2021? What is that, Julia? I'm telling you, mate, get with Johnny Paranormal. Crazy stuff in Australia. You know, Jimmy, I would love to go to Australia, and not only because I just love to look into the Yowie and research there, but through this show, we've made so many amazing connections with people in Oz, and it's been a real honor. Ken Rotman has been with me since the very beginning. I think he was one of the very first people to ever listen to my show, and Ken's from Australia, and Aussie, and of course Cade and Dean Harrison. So we've got a lot of fantastic connections I'd like to make in person. So Australia is definitely on the table. It's a really ambitious trip for us to make. We're still a small show. We don't have a big budget, so an Australian trip isn't quite on the table. But hopefully we'll continue to grow and develop and be able to make those things for sure, brother. But if we do, I hope you'll come out and be a part of whatever we do when we come there. Great shows, great people. Thank you, Mike. Good to see you. And thank you, Farm. I appreciate that. And thank you to all of you guys who are here. And remember, stick around, because Paisley Wild is coming up next with the Spaces Between. And Don and I will be back tomorrow night, and we'll dig into more of the paranormal. Again, probably not going to get into the Coloma stuff quite yet, but we'll do it as quickly as we can. Spokane is Comic-Con for Spokane. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, I'm good to go, Julia. Love to take a trip over there. We're still looking at possibly doing the Bigfoot Roundup in November in Spokane, but we'll see, because everything is kind of up in the air. We were supposed to be at the International Bigfoot Conference in Washington next month, but obviously or maybe that was September, but that got canceled due to the current situation, and I don't know how Washington State's going to do for the roundup. I was talking to the organizer and dear friend of ours, Stephen Major, and he wasn't sure, but he said plan on it for now. So we may be in Spokane for the Bigfoot roundup yet this fall in November, or this beginning of winter. I guess that'll be in November. But there's a lot of other announcements coming up too, ladies and gentlemen. I can't tip my hat, but there's other projects that I'm working on that'll be starting very soon. When I can let you know about those, I sure will. But just suffice it to say, the deck is stacked. Thank you, Bill. I appreciate that. Great show, Bill says in TFR. Thank you, Bam. I appreciate it. Hey, Rod, good to see you, brother. Thanks for being a part of the show tonight. It's always a pleasure. But that's going to wrap it up for us, ladies and gentlemen. Love you all. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other. Help each other out. Find the magic in every day. And remember to laugh as much as you can. Love you guys. We'll be back tomorrow night. Don't miss it.